Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Health and Wealth Podcast with your hosts, Tim and Carter.
What's trending, Enrichers? Carter Wilcoxon, founder of CSI Financial Group here, with my co-host and former wealth advisor, Tim James, founder of
ChemicalFreeBody.com and your new health advisor. This is the show where we reveal the connection between physical and financial abundance.
Hey, welcome back, Enrichers. Carter Wilcoxon coming to you from rainy, cool Phoenix, Arizona, which is totally unusual, right? Summertime, mid-August here in Phoenix. And our guest who spent a little bit of time, we're going to be bringing him on here in just a second and everything. But we got this little tropical depression, Hurricane Hillary that came through, and it cooled everything off in Phoenix. I was just talking pre-show about how I play golf in like lower 90s, which is unusual out here. And, of course, we get no humidity. It's dry. It's a dry heat. People make fun of us, but there really is a difference between that dry and that humid heat. But anyway, as is normal, I am joined by my fantastic Mr. Chemical Free Body co-host himself, Tim James. Timmy, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing awesome. We have a little bit of that hurricane hit us over here in Northeast Oregon as well. And I was like, oh, man, you're thinking hurricane, you're thinking lots of winds, and I've got metal that's not completely secured on my building yet. And so I'm out there screwing the metal down. And then we did get a little bit of wind 2 days ago, and then it went away, and it's just kind of been just sitting there raining. No big deal. I'm like, oh, this is good for the forest fires. And then today, man, it's dumping. It flooded the streets in town. All the city workers are out unplugging all the drains. I mean, it's kind of a mess in town right now, actually. So, but I'm happy that we got the rain because the air quality was horrible because of all the forest fires, and it brought our air quality right back, and that's a problem. As the health side of things goes, because this is the Health and Wealth Podcast. A lot of people, the biggest problem that we have globally is pollution. It really is, and so fires and stuff like that add to that problem. So, I'm glad that the rain came. It'll be gone soon. It'll be back to 80, 90 degree weather. It'll be great.
Yeah, well, it's our monsoon season here and everything in Phoenix, so we've gotten a little bit of that rain, and that hurricane, brought up some moisture. And we do. Don't get me wrong, we get humidity here, right? Like I think we were like at 42%, so that's pretty drastic for us around here. So
yeah.
Anyway, I want to go ahead and bring on our guest today, Patrick Huey, coming in from very humid Florida, especially this time of year, I'm sure, right? Patrick, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Good to see you, boys.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah. So, Patrick, just out of curiosity, what are you guys dealing with there in Florida? Because it's actually hurricane season in Florida, right?
It is the old Jimmy Buffett song, Trying to Reason with Hurricane Season. We've been good to go so far. I mean, Irma chased us out of the state last year in October. That was a very interesting storm. It wasn't the rainfall so much as the storm surge that really nailed us. But we came through it fine. We were back up and running within about 3 days. And now you guys are getting a little taste of what it's like in the fall in Florida.
Totally.
Well, we'll take a little bit of the moisture, that's for sure. So, well, hey, Enrichers, we're very excited for you to be joining us for another episode of the Health and Wealth Podcast. And as is normal here, what we like to do is we like to get an idea of the journey of our guests. So, Patrick, what was it that really initially got you into the financial services business in the first place to have you, helping your clients that you're doing today?
In a word, it was a mistake. And I think a lot of people have a similar story. My backstory, I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, and I joined the Navy when I was 18. They put me through college, which I super appreciate, especially these days. And I then went on and went through Navy flight school in Pensacola, ended up flying airplanes for 9 years in the Navy. And when I got done with that, I was out on the West Coast in California, and I was just looking around trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life, what I wanted to do when I grew up, because flying airplanes in your 20s is not conducive to maturity and growing up, believe it or not. So I was looking around. I was going to job fairs. Actually had a group that approached me out of Chicago, and they wanted to hire me to be a trader because they had read some book or some study about Israeli fighter pilots making great traders. Probably having something to do with, not really caring too much or getting overly excited when things were going against them. So I went down a path with them, ultimately did not end up working with them, but it got me a little bit more interested in financial services. And I started looking around and ultimately was hired to work in San Francisco at a place that I wouldn't recommend these days to anybody trying to get into business, but that's how we all got in the early 2000s. You smiled and dialed and you took it on the chin and you figured out what you were going to do next. I turned independent in 2016, started my own firm, and that's where we are today. Still serving families and the occasional nonprofit that we enjoy working with. And that's it. Victory Independent Planning. That's my firm, and that's where we are.
Nice. Awesome. So I'm interested. Share a little bit more about your military background and how that might have even has helped you along the way with, I don't know, call it discipline and some of your capabilities, maybe.
Good question. I think that the military background, you can certainly oversell it, especially when you're talking to clients. But the one thing that the military does do is create some good habit patterns for you. And I like, I don't know if you've ever listened to Jocko Willnick's podcast. He's a former Navy SEAL, and he talks a lot about how, when you are short on motivation, it's the discipline that gets you through, right? So when you create systems and you create checklists and you make sure that you're, checking everything off for the day and making sure you stay disciplined, that's going to lead you to success a lot more than trying to be quote unquote motivated. Motivation is temporary, and it can be a very fleeting thing. That's my major takeaway from my military experience.
Nice. So you were a pilot. So what did that all entail when you were in the military?
I have to stop you. I was a naval flight officer.
Oh, okay.
We R2 units are very picky about that. And shout out to my naval flight officer brothers out there who will get that joke.
So then, but you were flying a plane,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't something that you wanted to pursue. Like I think about those that were in the military and they were flying, like they become like commercial airline pilots a lot of times. Is that right? Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's fairly accurate. I was a naval flight officer. I was a F-14 Rio. So if you've seen the movie Top Gun, I was Goose. That's how I related to civilians. And, most of my hours didn't really qualify to go straight into the airlines. I would have had to go back to school and done some additional training. But at the end of the day, it wasn't that interesting to me. I did, I actually interviewed for a job at United on their ground staff. And that's a whole different story for another day.
So you ended up now born and raised in Northern California then?
No, I grew up in Pennsylvania.
Well, I missed the part where you ended up in California then.
That's called needs of the Navy, Carter. That's you go where they send you.
Okay. So you get stationed somewhere in California then is what you're saying?
Yep.
And was that in Northern California at the time, or did you end up just?
I was stationed in the scenic area of California called the Central Valley, where cows don't complain about jet noise. Everybody else on the coast does, so they moved us all inland and made sure that we didn't bother anybody. I can tell you I spent one weekend there in 3 years. I was on the road every weekend going to Tahoe or going to San Francisco to see my then girlfriend, now wife, and try to make the best of what was a tough situation for a single guy stationed out there.
So what kind of a role did your parents have with you on the direction of getting into the military to start? And then ultimately, was there any influence there to get into financial services?
Yeah, interesting. I never would have really piece that together. So that's a pretty interesting question. But the answer is yes. Father was in the Air Force. My brother was in the Navy. My grandfather was in the Marine Corps. We do have a military background in our family. And my dad was in banking for most of his adult life. Kind of a cool story with him. He started out as a used car salesman, and then moved over into the finance and insurance side of things, and wound up as vice president of a regional bank.
Wow, now back in Pennsylvania, I'm assuming, where you grew up.
Correct.
Gotcha. Now, what part of Pennsylvania were you in? Was that more the rural area or the city?
It depends on what you call rural. I grew up in a town of about 100,000 people and declining on the intersection of Interstate 79 and 90. It's called Erie, Pennsylvania. And went to school at Pittsburgh. That's where I got my scholarship from the Navy. And after that, it was off to see the world.
Gotcha. So you're a Pitt Panther then?
I am. Hail to Pitt.
Oh, okay. All right. How's your guys' we're coming up on football season, obviously, right? I'm assuming you cheer them on, right?
Yeah. Well, the great thing about Pitt is you really never know what you're going to get until about middle of the season. This could be the breakout year for us, or we could go, 4-8. There's really no telling.
Now, you mentioned your then girlfriend. You would travel every weekend to go see her, now wife. So how did you guys meet? Sounds like you've been all over the country in this story. Where did you meet that you had to travel to go see her?
We met in San Francisco. So I was couch surfing on a buddy's couch in San Francisco in his apartment, and across the hall from him actually moved in my future wife's best friend. So we were destined to cross paths eventually in that tiny little apartment building.
So you guys met and you had your rendezvous in Tahoe from time to time, it sounds like.
We did. That was kind of where I went to go blow off steam. I had it pretty well figured out with the flight schedule. My next door neighbor was the scheduling officer. So I made it worth his while to put me on the first flight Friday morning. I'd be briefing at 5:30 in the morning, but I'd be done by 10 and on the road and in San Francisco in time for happy hour. And then I would have the last flight on Monday night, typically, a night bombing run where we didn't start until 8 o'clock at night. So you work the system, and I was fortunate enough then to find enough good friends up there, moved in with a couple of them, and just kind of created a life for myself where I was in San Francisco 4 days a week.
So did you, were you on the California or the Nevada side then of Tahoe when you would spend time there?
California side. Yeah. It used to only be about a 2.5 to 3 hour drive from the city. I think it's now about 6, just based on the popularity.
Good Lord. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, traffic there is great. Well, one of our companies is actually in Incline Village, so that's why I know that area even.
Yeah.
So it's a gorgeous area. By the way, this time of year is really nice to go.
Oh yeah, especially if you mountain bike or hike or do any of those things. It's a pretty awesome spot.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So before, I know we're coming up on our first break. Before we go though, I'm always curious on, because as an entrepreneur myself, started my own business, I know how critically important it is to have that one in the foxhole with you, be so supportive. So can you talk a little bit about how meaningful it's been for your then girlfriend, now wife, during your journey as you continue down this financial services world?
Yeah, she's been amazing in a lot of different ways. It was pretty nice when I started my business. She had already started a business, so she knew exactly what to do. She knew exactly what paperwork to file, and she made it very easy for me on that end of the transition. The other nice thing is that she's got a background in marketing. So when it was time to, hang out the shingle, we knew who to call to actually create the shingle. And it's been really a good marriage of skills to where when we started Victory Independent Planning, it was just about seamless.
Nice. That's awesome. Well,
VIP.
yeah.
Exactly.
And then, so what is your spouse's name?
Her name is Dixie, and I got to say, she's now transitioned over into Tim's world, focusing on nutrition counseling, and she's working with some folks who are reversing type 2 diabetes with dietary changes.
That's music to our ears right there, right, Tim?
Dude, I think I already know her. I think she is her last
There's
name
only so many
Rob?
Dixies. No.
Does she have a different? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I literally just had a health coach refer to me. This lady's like, this gal Dixie's been listening to your podcast, and she told me it because this client has Epstein-Barr virus, and got referred to me. So I'm just thinking, wait a minute, I think I might know this one. Health coach Dixie. Nope.
Apparently there's more than one.
Close.
Yeah.
It's close. All right, guys. Well, I think it's time to take a break. When we get back, let's get into what Patrick's doing in his business to help people keep their money safe and grow it. We'll be right back.
Estate planning. What does that even mean? When the inevitable happens for everyone on this planet, your estate plan kicks into action. But first, let's start with what an estate is. An estate is simply everything you own. Now, here's the issue and what needs to be understood when this event occurs. You only have two choices on this plan. Number one, either you plan how your estate gets handed out and distributed to those you leave behind. Or number two, your state decides who gets everything you own. For the first time ever, you can now take complete and total control of this plan that you've been deprived of for most of your life and generations before you. You can get personalized assistance along the way with a team of specialists whose job it is to make sure you have true peace of mind. It's important to understand that estate planning is a journey, and rest assured that our team will be available to you all along the way and at every step. Welcome to Estate Plan, home of the last estate plan you'll ever need. To learn more, make sure to reach out to your local advisor licensed with us or go to our website for more information.
What's up, Enrichers? Tim James here. I'm back with my co-host Carter Wilcoxon. Again, today in the house, we've got Patrick Huey, certified financial planner, VIP. He's going to tell you all about VIP and what he's doing over there to help people with their money, keep it safe, grow it, do all the things that financial advisors do. So, Patrick, why don't you just give us the background and what's your unique selling proposition, or what it is? What is it you do best over there for people?
Yeah, I think that like a lot of folks in my space, I'm a generalist, but I'm a generalist who has some very specific things that he looks for when he's working with folks. I'm also an accredited tax preparer. I don't actually prepare taxes, but I've got the designation, and I'm a chartered advisor in philanthropy. So I look for people where those skills can come into play and help them. Because, when you get in retirement, if your house is paid off, a lot of times if you're charitably inclined, the second biggest check you cut on a monthly basis could be to a 501c3, after the utilities. So what we've created is, some systems and some technology to identify the folks that are charitably inclined and get them thinking strategically about how they need to proceed with those donations, how they can maximize their impact, and how they can do it all without impacting their own retirement.
Tim, I'm pretty sure we've never had anybody on the show that even broached much of that subject right there. So
not at all.
Yeah. What was it that kind of got you going that direction? I mean, you're always sort of, it's interesting. You said you're a generalist, but then that is very niche. It feels like.
It is, but it's like anything else, Carter. You've got maybe 20% of your client base that falls into that, niche or micro niche. A lot of other folks are maybe not charitably inclined. It's not that I don't work with those folks. It's that to get the full value out of what I do and what, my skill set is, that's what I'm looking for. Those are the folks that are, the raving fans, because, you save somebody $20,000 on their taxes by showing them how to, take money, put it in a donor advised fund, and kind of lump their next 5 years of donations together. You just paid for your own fee for how many years, right? At least a couple, depending on the account size. So yeah, it's nichey, but it's also something that if you do it right, it really does make an impact, not just for you, not just for the client, but for that charity that's downstream and benefiting from that planning.
I actually realized that, like, when I was a financial advisor, now I know what the part of it that I liked. I loved finding that nichey shit. That, having somebody come in and they're going to write a check out to the government for $400,000 because they sold a property they owned outright for 33 years. And it was just, they didn't want to deal with it anymore. They're getting ready to just, sunset and be done with it. And I'm like, well, hey, instead of writing a check to the government, why don't we write a check for, $475,000 and you put it to an oil and gas program it's high risk, but it ain't more higher risk than writing a check, because the government's going to give you zero return. It's gone. Right. It's down. It's right. Flushing it. And it's like, why don't we do that? And then you can put that money into investment and get 100. It was like 90% tax credit at the time of one of the investments. And then, oh my God, they're looking at each other like, is this real? Is this? And I got off on that stuff. I love like saving people like big money and nichey stuff like that. And I remember that specific deal. That was the first one that I did that with the oil and gas program. And I don't recommend oil and gas as something that you would want to put a tremendous amount of your portfolio in.
Thank you.
But for that purpose, pretty darn good. Pretty darn good. It was paying out.
Yeah,
like
that's
10-12%.
I'm with you, man. That's the piece I like too, and what gets me jazzed up about this industry, because a lot of it can be a drag. A lot of it can be a slog, and not knowing where the next client's going to come from. But that piece where you're a problem solver and you're able to put two and two together and figure something out for somebody that they would not have figured out, that is powerful. Everything else to me is commoditized, right? We're all offering, stock and bond portfolios, or most of us are. And we're all talking about, mutual funds and insurance and annuities and yada, yada. But at the end of the day, you got to be a problem solver, because all that stuff is basically tools in your toolbox, and you got to figure out how to use it.
Yeah, and as the years tick by, you learn more tools, and then you can put them together, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I can put this tool with that tool and that tool, and then wow, then you really got something. And I just realized, Carl, that's what I've been doing over here in the health field. It's like, I'm really excited about helping people with their health, but a perfect example would be that, the sauna. Like, I sold saunas for years, and I found that new one that broke a natural law, and I used it. It's like, God, this thing's freaking amazing. Like, I got to tell everybody in the world about this. And I told Carter it took me a year. I must not be very convincing.
Well, Carter lives.
Finally, he got the damn thing, and he's like, "Everybody in America needs one of these." Like, I know, it's amazing. I guess I might need Dixie's help on marketing or something. I need some help. I've got some really awesome stuff, and that sauna is just one of many tools that I found. And sounds like that's the same thing that you're doing, Patrick, is you've put a nice toolkit together for your clients.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you want to be able to come back to people, with a message that is helpful to them, but is also data driven, right? And you talk about tools, and we can get into this a little bit later on the health side. I use tools for health as well. I mean, I take my blood glucose on a daily basis, and I'm not diabetic. I just want the data, and the data is what helps you then turn that into a system, and then the system is what helps you be able to turn that into something that makes a difference and creates value. So, yeah, I'm with you. That's the good stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love obviously always trying to bring value. I mean, that's kind of sort of my mantra, bring value every chance you get. And, you have to be, different, unique, you've got to be able to, have that niche, or you call that a micro niche. But I do kind of want to go back to that micro niche a little bit and, share a little bit about, donor advised funds. Is that something that you stumbled upon, or is that something that you meaningfully went that direction?
It's mostly meaningful. Obviously, I got involved with the charitable side of things in the Chartered Advisor and Philanthropy program. And I did that because I was working actually for a nonprofit in Portland, Oregon at the time. And I was on their board. I shouldn't say I was working for them. I became the treasurer. I was moving up through the ranks, and I realized that I didn't really know a whole lot about fundraising. And I wanted to be able to speak intelligently, with donors as well as with board members, about how to run a nonprofit. And in that program, you get a little bit of both. You get a bit of, organization side, and you get a little bit of the donor side. And I just started to learn more and more about the tools that you could use, split gifts, donor advised funds, all kinds of, intricacies between those two things. But, to me, when you start looking at the average investor, and I don't work with super wealthy people, not against it, but my, core group is kind of the millionaire next door. And, they are the folks that get overlooked in charitable giving, and yet they cut the most checks. They're not the biggest checks, but they're the most.
Right.
And they don't get the strategic input that somebody, with $1 billion does. I guess it makes sense, but at some point, somebody's got to step in and say, hey, you know what? You could be doing this differently and tactically, helping yourself out, paying less money to the government and more money to the charity, and everybody wins. And, if you can do that at scale, great. If you can do that repetitively, great, because then word gets around and you're the problem solver for that group.
So it sounds like then that you're really working with more the mass affluent demographic that tends to be underserved in those areas that you specialize in.
Yeah, mass affluent, that's the marketing name, right, for the millionaires next door.
Yeah, exactly.
Because millionaire next door, I think, is copyrighted. Sorry about that.
All right. Well, hey, I think you were paraphrasing is what you were doing. But in any event, so let's talk a little bit about then, your clientele. Do they, with the fact that, and we talked a little bit, maybe you want to share some of the story about you were on the road living and, touring or something. You talked pre-show, share that story a little bit, and then how that turned into like a mobile office during COVID.
So we were living in Portland, and my wife turned 40 on a beach in the Caribbean. And she looked at me and said, now that you own your own business, can we do more of this? Meaning be on the beach. And I said, well, yeah, sure. And I didn't realize what she meant was, I'm going to go back and list the house. And when it sells, we're going to go somewhere and live on the beach. So that was February of 2018. By June, the house had sold. We had gone over to Idaho, picked up our trailer, and we were on the road that June.
And you were on the road for how long before you finally settled in Florida?
We were on the road for about 9 months, and we finally came off because we broke down in Nashville. It's going to take them about a week to fix it. And we called a friend of ours who lived in South Florida on the Gulf Coast and said, hey, is there any chance that your rental unit has opened up? We're kind of homeless for the month. And oddly enough, their renter had canceled about 2 days prior. We came down, we lived in Bonita Springs for a month, looked up and down the Gulf Coast, and finally settled on Marco Island, Florida. Moved in here in 2019.
Wow. So then how did, during COVID, how did all of that travel, modify, or maybe it shaped what your business model looks like?
Yeah, like everybody else, I didn't have a plan for COVID. We kind of made it up as we went along. Zoom was, kind of the go-to. After a while, we got super bored with that and said, we still have this RV and places are starting to open up. Let's go. And we went, on a couple of longer trips, some of them to see clients, not as many just because people were still fairly, gun shy at that point about meeting in person. But there was no reason why I couldn't go and be in the Smoky Mountains in the summertime instead of, 95 degrees and 95% humidity, and do Zoom calls and talk to people. And we were talking off air. It got me a spot on FA Magazine as one of the best mobile offices for advisors during COVID.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. We'll have to make sure that in the show notes we get a link to be able to share that so people can read that article. That'll be cool.
If it's still up, we'll try.
Well, we'll try. We'll do the research and try to find it and everything. But, then what is as far as your clientele, then did you expand your reach as far as access or making yourself accessible to clients that weren't just in Florida? Are you working with clients like in, the Southeast region, or are you, more on a national basis? How's that work?
We're national now. I've lost count of how many states we're in, but Zoom has helped. For better for worse, COVID kind of made that a normal thing, right? So you don't necessarily need to be in front of people as much as you used to. They don't expect it, and we've taken advantage of that somewhat in our expansion. Still a lot of clients back in Portland, where I started my firm. Fair amount down here in Florida, some up in the Northeast corridor, smattering over the Midwest. I mean, it's just, the people I want to work with are all over the place, and geography is not a hindrance to me anymore.
Yeah, and you already mentioned it, right? And we've seen this, in a lot of the advisement we give with our advisors is that, the acceptance of doing, virtual meetings,
Mm-hmm.
It was accelerated during COVID, right? And you're seeing, that play out in real time, basically. So why limit yourself to your own community / neighborhood whenever what you do can be, very meaningful and impactful for those who aren't in that area doing that?
Yeah, it gets my brain working sometimes because, I think about maybe spending more time overseas later on in life, maybe when my son's out of the house. But could we facilitate, almost everything that I do on a daily basis from anywhere in the world? I think we probably can. And we'll test that at some point.
Just need a good internet connection, baby. That's all you need.
I know it.
Yeah.
Of course, you are missing out that, that personal to person connection, that human connection. I mean, that is important, but you can run your business. And then, I don't know if you knew this, Patrick, but this is why you probably didn't know this, but when you do a Zoom call, or I guess we're on Webinar Jam on this one, Carter's actually a robot. He's not a real human, and you can't even tell.
They can do so much with AI.
So you can get fooled once in a while. I'm the real human here. He's AI robot.
Yeah.
He's programmed to play golf. This
Well,
is just a little side hustle he's got going on.
yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. That's for sure. No doubt about it.
Hey, dude, if you're a robot, you should be shooting better. You should have a better handicap.
I should be a plus handicap. I should be on the PGA Tour of being a robot.
That's right.
Oh, unfortunately, not so much. But my son. So, out of curiosity, how old is your son then, Patrick?
He's 9.
Oh, okay, all right. So you got a few years, obviously, to go, and then just yours and Dixie's only.
Yep, that's it.
All right, so only child. Well, my son is 16. Just started he'll start his junior year here, and I think next Monday actually is when he starts. But yeah, I spent a lot of time with him. He plays golf. He's got a personal trainer, and he's got a mental coach, and his own golf coach, and works with him all the time. But the point to that is that you need that. So what I'm curious about is, as I'm listening to your business model, it seems replicatable if you had others that were sort of similar to you, that you could be able to. Is that something in the future that you're looking at doing and growing your practice, or is that what's happening now?
It's not happening now. It's not something that I've considered. I still feel very young in this endeavor, right? I've been doing it for 7 years on my own, but I still feel like I'm a new business owner. You know what I mean? So I do struggle with some of those big long-term planning pieces. I've said from the beginning, I don't really want to go down that route, but things could change. I like just being me and having me be the face of the firm. I'm perfectly willing to delegate stuff to folks when it's feasible. And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Well, let me ask you this question. If you are working with clients in different areas, how many of those relationships were formed, virtual only? How many do you think you have? You have a handful? Do you have 50? I mean,
it's a handful. It's a handful. Yeah. Most of the folks that I work with, I have at least met in person once. I do try to make sure that I get around and do that for most of them. But there are a handful. It just hasn't worked out yet. I agree with Tim. I mean, I think that there is no real substitute for human interaction. And, the question is, do you need that to be in person, face to face, twice a year? I would submit no. But other people will argue.
Well, let me ask you this question then, because I'm curious about this, because we just got to mention about how, the acceptance and willingness of your prospects that turn into clients can now meet you virtually anywhere, right? So if you're talking about somewhere even international, you can be while you're meeting with them. Be that as it may, right now, though, what I'm curious about, and some of our enrichers who are other advisors may be, either struggling or maybe they're successful at this. But what do you think is the thing that takes a prospect that's virtual only that turns into a client for you?
For me, I think it's demonstrating, the proactivity and basically letting them know that you are, now part of the VIP Get and Stay Retired blueprint. And in that blueprint is a service model. And I call that service model 52-12-4-2. And the 52 is a weekly email that I send out to clients. I actually write it. I then turn it into a podcast for general consumption. I send 12 individual financial planning related emails throughout the year. They get 4 offers for a quarterly review, so they can jump in my calendar and schedule. And then they get 2 in-person, I'm going to air quote in person, Zoom calls as far as reviews. So I think that is important. That's an important piece of letting them know that they're not just going to sign the paperwork and then not hear from you for 6 months. I think it's important that they have something in their inbox from you from time to time, that even if they don't read it, I don't know how many of my clients I know how many clients open my emails. I don't know how many actually read it.
Sure.
And I don't care, because what's most important for me is that they've got the email there. They can hit reply and ask me a question. They can schedule. They can do whatever they need to do. And I'm, there to provide whatever they need.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, it's time for another break. We'll be right back.
want the absolute best for yourself, and you want it to be easy. That's why we created Green 85. It helps with detoxifying the body gently. We're proud it's chemical-free, unlike almost all other supplements you'll find. Bottom line, Green 85 will get you healthier. We look forward to hearing what Green 85 did for you.
To get this product and our other amazing products, go to chemicalfreebody.com. That's chemicalfreebody.com.
What's up, Enrichers? Tim James here. I'm back with my co-host, Carter Wilcoxon. We're here with Patrick Huey, certified financial planner. Hey, Patrick, this is the section of our talk today where we get to flip the script and you get to ask me any question on health. So ask away.
Well, let me give you a little bit of health backstory for myself. I mean, Carter knows from his years in the business, and Tim, I'm sure you saw it as well as a financial advisor. There is a supreme lack of health and wellness in our community.
Supreme, that's the best word ever, probably, for that.
The old joke.
Supersized.
Yeah, exactly. We used to call it broker butt back in the day. But I struggled with it too. I'm in great shape now, but around about the time that I was starting the business, maybe a year or two prior, after my son was born, you get busy, you stop paying attention to the things that really matter with your health. And all of a sudden you find yourself overweight and your blood pressure's out of tolerances. I will say, I'm going to give him a plug if that's okay. Dr. Miles Hassel in Portland, Oregon. He wrote the book, Good Food, Great Medicine. And he's one of those guys that doesn't take insurance. You got to cut the check, but it's worth every damn dollar because he's not on anybody's dole. He's going to tell you what you need to stay off of medications instead of, just putting you on the long slide towards, the 7-8 pills that the average American pops. So that's kind of my story. He turned me around, got me eating clean. My wife had seen him before I did. She's been an absolute evangelical, light for eating clean, eating real foods, and just not screwing around with a lot of the products that are pushed on us every day that are not necessarily good for human health. So that's a long tirade of mine. Are you seeing, similar people looking for help? My feeling is that, like, we all see it. If you travel through an airport in America, you can't help but notice that something is deeply, deeply wrong. And yet I just wonder how many people are actually reaching out for help.
Well, it's definitely, I don't see myself going out of business anytime soon. I've been talking about this recently, just talking to people and on different shows and podcasts, radio shows, and just, conversations. Actually, I had a guy that I knew, who's a friend of mine. He just recently called me. He's like, well, I kind of got myself in a pickle. And this guy, let me put this into context here. He was like almost a professional soccer player. Okay. Like, he probably could have done it, but, just like whatever. So very athletic. And, I know why. He got in a car accident. That's what happened. He actually got in a car accident and had a bunch of pins and stuff put in his leg. So he got into sales, and he was doing pretty good for a young kid in his early 20s, making about $8,000 a month. Pretty darn good. And he called me up and he's like, man, I need your help. And I'm like, what happened? He's like, I was in the middle of doing a deal and I couldn't talk. I just couldn't talk anymore. And this happened twice. And then finally the second time he called me up, he's like, I need some help. So he had severe anxiety. It was from trauma from that car accident is what it was. Maybe some other stuff. So I ended up helping him with that years ago. He's one of my first coaching students back when I was just getting my ears wet doing it. And then he just called me the other day and he's like, yeah, I kind of got myself in a pickle again. I go, what happened? And well, I broke up with a girl and I started drinking alcohol a lot. And yeah, my liver's shutting down. I'm in the hospital right now. And he's just telling me all this stuff. They're putting him on all these things that's not working. And I gave him this whole dissertation on what to do just because he's a friend. And then I'm like, it's kind of crazy that my company even exists. Like, why should I even have, why should a company have to exist to get 6 to 12 pounds of impacted fecal material out of people's colons that's sitting there rotting in their gut? Why should my company exist to pull out heavy metals, radiation, pollution it's in the umbilical cord blood of every child being born? I mean, every child being born has 180 cancer-causing chemicals plus. That's the low end. Plus. That's the low end. Plus. Let me just repeat. That is the low end. So our children are polluted. We're polluted. Why do I have to create products to ship them to you so you can get phytonutrients, these plant nutrients into your body? Or replace the bacteria that's missing in your gut because they've been killed? It's just like, you should just go out, pick food out of nature and eat it like every other wild creature. But in the inner cities with the concrete jungle and stuff, you don't have access to that. But you do have access to alcohol stores and mini marts that have, it's just all processed crap. It's poison.
Well, and even if you get outside the urban center and go to, a farm, God forbid it's monocrop agriculture, it's depletion of the soil. I mean, you've got a lot of problems with our food system, starting at the source in America that I don't think people really take the time to think about. I spend a lot of time, we talked about trying to get overseas. We spend a lot of time in France. My wife is fluent. And we travel over there quite a bit, and that's a culture that, just adores food, not shit that you buy in the grocery store. Food. I mean, real whole foods, single ingredient. And, that to me was kind of an eye opener as far as just how far we have drifted from, our ancestors 100 years ago. It didn't used to be like this.
No. Well, I guess to answer your question is like, we're open for business and we have new people, lots of people coming into our business, new ones every week. And we're growing and we're just trying to get people back to nature. We're trying to get all the man-made crap and chemicals out of their body, clean up their cells, their fat, their muscle tissue, their gut, and then, plug them back into nature. And at the same time, there's, the major disconnect from nature. And because of that, and because of societal conditioning and parental conditioning and certain things going on, there's also a disconnect from our people's spiritual connection, right? So what I first got started this, I was just like, oh, I'm going to help people do what I did. I'm going to help them with clean up, get their body right. But then when I got my body right out of the gate, I literally raised my vibrational frequency, like literally. And then that tapped me more into God, that spiritual path. And so it took me about 2011 to 2018, about 7 years later, where I finally got on track with it. And I started exploring and like having all these things that I thought was all woo-woo BS turned out to be like the real thing. And I'm like having these breakthrough in my life. And I was kind of nervous to share it with people, but I thought, well, I won't tell them where I got this information, but I'll just share the concept. And then I'd share the concept. And then my coaching students were like, oh my God, dude, that was the most profound coaching session. This happened to me and this happened. So I started like layering it in there very quietly. And then now it's like, for me, I'm fully upfront about it. Like when people come to us, this is not just about, the reason why that you're suffering is because you're disconnected from source. God, he, she, it, the vortex, the higher mind, whatever you want to call it. Everybody has their own, thing that they do. It doesn't matter to me. It's all the same, but it's different. And I just want to get you connected back to that. But to do it, we go through the body. We clean up the body and raise the body because it's very, if you actually believe in God, whatever your version is for you, and God gave you this body as a gift to go experience this life, you're kind of slapping God in the face, if they have a face, depending on your religion, and by not taking care of it. It's kind of like, it's an insult. And it's like, so that is like one of the first things you should do is like look in the mirror and be like, man, it's like, this is a real gift. Like I get to do anything. I can choose dark. I can choose light. I can paint. I can become a financial advisor. I can play guitar, violin. I can go help old people shovel or walk. You can do whatever you want. Like you can literally do, it's like Playland. It's like a blank canvas every day when you wake up. But if so many people are so dogged down in got to pay the bills and this and that and stress and all sort of stuff, they're missing out on this whole experience that we call life.
Well, they're missing out on vitality, right? You know, they have a body that's broken, and it's very hard to have a spirit that's not broken. You know, if you're in pain, or if you can't do simple functions like go for a walk with your kid. That to me is kind of where we're at a crossroads in society, where we got to start taking better care of ourselves because the younger generation is watching. And, we can go down.
And they are watching too. They are watching because my children were a perfect example, because I switched halfway. I was like 37 when I switched. And it was a tumultuous relationship with their mom. So I went super healthy, like crazy, like food Nazi. And then their mom was just like, give them more pizza. Cause I think for whatever reason, just doing the same thing we were doing that I used to do. And so, but now my children, my sons are in their 20s and they've come back and they're asking me questions, and they're like they're getting healthier. They're getting healthier all the time. They're following my lead, but it took a while. So I led by example. I never wavered. I've always been on this path now.
Yeah.
But I did want to ask you a question, man. So
sure.
I really like it that your wife's a health coach and you're pretty learned in the subject. So I'm hoping you can, maybe I can answer a question for you that's like, you haven't, it's unanswered yet. Maybe for your personal health.
How do you, you mentioned
your child, maybe go ahead.
Yeah. You mentioned some of the heavy chemicals and elements and that sort of thing kind of trickling in. Like, what do you think is the cause of that?
Well, it's
multifaceted.
It's multifaceted. Well, heavy metals is an example. You could have, old iron pipes that are rusting, that you're drinking that water, right? You don't have a proper system. You could be drinking out of aluminum cans and you're putting aluminum particles. You could be using aluminum foil. You could be cooking out of aluminum cookware. If you're breathing air, some people out there, like, they don't believe in chemtrails, but I had a lot of people challenge me on that because I learned about it. I actually had a guy on who had the he has a podcast, Matt Landman, not a podcast, but maybe he does now, but he has a documentary called Frankenskies. If you guys haven't seen it, watch it. It's called Frankenskies. And I had him on my show to talk about chemtrails. Well, so if they're spraying nano-sized aluminum particles in the air, then I'm thinking, you can't see it. That's the problem. So everybody thinks half the people think it's BS probably. And so I'm like, well, it's still aluminum. It still weighs heavier in air. It's going to fall to the earth. If you look at the soil people, the biologists, they're testing air and water and soil samples and plant samples, and aluminum's going through the roof. In fact, it's so high now it's killing some plants. You can also get it from vaccines. There's aluminum adjuvants in vaccinations. And the problem with these metals and stuff, you can even get off of silverware and stuff, is that cookware. Is that it's you can't see it. It slowly builds up. It can get into the brain, and then it's metal, right? And what you go into, what did they roll out full steam ahead during COVID? It was 5G, right? And before that, there was 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, now 5G, moving on to 6. And 5G was right below military grade weaponry. You also have smart meters, aka smart meters. I call them kill boxes, that are outside of your home. And those are the same as a microwave. It's the same frequency as like standing there and getting zapped. And by the way, if your microwave's on in the room and you're in the room, you're getting zapped on the outside too, not just the inside. You have so anyway, my point is, like, if these metals then get and you're getting zapped because you have the Wi-Fi and the smart meters, and you actually have ELFs, electric low frequency, from your electrical lines in your home. So if your bed is within 3 foot of an electrical socket line, then guess what? You're getting zapped. I've seen the little meters, like, and you get, whoa, it's like you're like, oh my God, it's real now. And then there's devices now you can put on there, but a lot of people's children are sleeping within 3 foot of a light socket. That's not good for sleep. It's not going to be good for their test scores. It's not going to be good for their immune system. And you're going to have more late nights up with them and take them to the doctor for throat, nose, and ear infections and all these problems because their immune system's crashed because they're not grounded. They're getting zapped. They're full of heavy metals. You see the problem? It's crazy. It's crazy. It's everywhere. So what we do is we take all this craziness and we just tell people to take a big breath. It's like, okay, it's there. We give them the awareness. There's a little bit of fear there, but it's like, now what are we going to do? Okay, we're going to start voting with our dollars. Number one, we're going to stop buying crap that's poisoning us. Yeah. That's it. We're going to stop paying for poison. That's it. We're going to stop paying for poison. We're going to find other companies that either have a clue or care, and you're going to start driving those dollars over to them and giving them your money. That, like our company, like I tell people all the time, I'm not bashful about it anymore. It's like, you should patronize us. I'm fanatical about the quality of these products. I'm fanatical about the potency and the purity of it because it's going into my body. So why wouldn't you buy this stuff? Because it's going to be good for you. Like, and we have a double your money back guarantee to prove it. So buying from companies like that, you change industry. So people, even if most people, well, whether you believe or don't believe it, your votes matter anymore, which they don't. Your vote still matters when you buy something. So collectively, if everybody stops buying stuff that's putting pollution into the environment, which is our biggest problem we have going on this globe right now, not climate change, but pollution, is then you're going to change industry. That's it. We still hold all the cards with our money. So, but it's giving people the awareness, Patrick. Stop buying that crap, and then we give people products and solutions and different strategies they can do at home, and sometimes with different, practitioners to get this crap out of them, literally. And so they can get their body back to just balance and normal, and then plug their butt back into the nature, and start flooding their body with living foods, living cultures, living bacterium, living phytochemicals. And man, we work on that, and we reducing their stress, and people just come back to life. This is not like some super difficult thing. It's actually really basic. We've talked about it before. It's reducing stress, getting the toxins out of the body, and flooding the body with living nature. You do those 3 things, you're going to come back at some level. I don't know how. I'm not a doctor. I don't claim to, cure anybody. We don't do that, but we help you, show you what we did to heal ourselves. And
are you finding it easier? You finding it easier now to talk to people about stuff like gut health? Because I feel it's finally starting to get a little bit mainstreamy.
Yeah. 12 years ago when I was talking about it, it was even hard to find good products in the store. I was talking about gut detox, and people are like, screw you, I ain't doing that. Right. And now it's like gut detox. All these companies are jumping up and, jumping on the bandwagon and putting products out there. So again, it's like, I get a lot of people that a lot of our clients are the I've tried everything clients. And a lot of people are skeptical too, because they've tried so much stuff, and there's a lot of companies out there just literally selling crap in a box, and they throw gut detox on it or gut cleanse or whatever. And, but there are some good ones too, right? So we've learned to help people. We know how to read labels over here. So we teach our clients how to read labels, which is important. But even that's being in jeopardy now, right? So they're putting stuff. I mean, some of this stuff, like in children's cereal, it pisses me off. Like, there's opiate derivatives in children's cereal, and it's not even on the box, to further addict them to the high fructose corn syrup and corn syrup, these super sugars, and then, enriched with synthetic chemical vitamins is stupid.
One of the great things about traveling in France is there is no high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah.
It's illegal there, right?
It is illegal there. Yeah.
Yep. Still legal around here.
So I have a serious question for both of you.
Okay.
When you decided to start this podcast, was Live Long and Prosper already trademarked?
Isn't that a line in a movie?
It's
Star Trek.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, super serious question.
What if I can do it with the other hand too? That's a little hard with my right hand.
I can do it both.
I know I can do this. Can you guys do this? I got to think about it. We're waving our hands around. That's what we're doing. We're doing Star Trek Spock symbols.
For those not watching.
Yeah, for the enrichers out there,
which is most people.
Yeah, exactly. What's awesome, Patrick, is I get to share the story about how we started this podcast. And it's such a cool story that, you know, I thought maybe you were going to go down that path, and it really didn't have anything other than with the fact that I just wanted to start a podcast. And I was blessed the fact that Tim, you know, unbeknownst to me, had been reached out to for me to be a guest on a show. So he got on my calendar. He's like, dude, you're in the financial service business. Why do you want to be a guest on my podcast? Right. And then lo and behold, well, Tim used to be a former wealth advisor turned health advisor now. So I was like, So one thing led to another. You know, it didn't happen overnight, but I remember that very first phone conversation. I was talking to Tim, and I was like, dude, why don't we start our own podcast? We'll call it the Health and Wealth Podcast. And I think you're going to be somewhere in the 80s as far as guests that we've had on here. And every single time, hopefully, you know, everybody gets to at least the health part on the end of this thing, because it's always just such great information. We're either, you know, sharing new information, or we're, you know, confirming or affirming information we've spoken about before and everything. And I think it's really cool that you've made that determination, that priority in your life. You reach some point in your life, Patrick, where you're like, enough's enough. I have to prioritize my health. Is that fair?
Absolutely. And I'm lucky I have a partner in that. My wife is definitely, you know, a driving force in a lot of those decisions, because she's got the knowledge. You know, she's gone through the coursework, and she understands things that I don't, and will point me in the direction. No, you should read this. You should read that. So yeah, I think it's important, but I also think it's important, you know, as a financial advisor, financial planner, to have some diverse interests. You know, I think you have to be looking outside of your fairly narrow lane, because if you want, you know, your clients to live long and prosper, they got to focus on their health and their wealth. And, you know, you may not be the person to point it out to them, but you could be. You know, how healthy are you? How's your health? How are things going?
Dude, it's the perfect conversation. It's the perfect conversation. It's like it's a value add that most of them can't even do because they're not healthy themselves. It's a huge conversation with people. And if the doctors were taught this, which it's not their fault, most of them, it's the system. But as a financial advisor, you guys both know that we become like counselors for these people as well. They're you know, hey, what toothbrush should I buy? And like, what should I do with my husband or my wife? And like, you know, it's all these crazy, we do everything for them. Basically. It's not just the financial stuff. So if I was back in the financial thing, I'd be like, look, here's the deal. I'm really good at what I do. I help people make money. And if I don't help you make your money and protect your assets, you should fire me. Let's get that up front. But at the same time, it doesn't really matter how much money you have if your health is in the toilet. And America's right now, their health is in the frickin' toilet. So you're not going to be able to enjoy it. You spend all your money or your time working up, saving these money. And now you got this pile of cash, one health event, and you're going to spend it all down. And you're going to leave the other person. You're going to be dead. Right. One of you's dead, and the other one's going to be destitute. And they spend all that money. One of my friends, George Wiseman, this product over here, his wife had lupus and $300,000 in medical expenses, bankrupt. You know, luckily he's a genius inventor, and now he's got this thing over in this company. He's done very well financially, but a lot of people can't rebound like that. They might not have that skill set. Maybe they did a certain type of job where it was repetitive. They drove a truck or something for 30 years, retired, and they worked their butt off for 35 years, and then they can't just go do it again. Maybe they're obsolete, and they put them out with a computer or somebody younger that can get 5 of them for the same price. You know.
You know, I mentioned it off air. I'm going to go ahead and mention it now for the folks that are listening and watching. The book is Outlive by Dr. Peter Attia. And he talks, you know, quite a bit about that kind of thing, moving towards what he calls medicine 3.0, where you're actually planning for the future instead of reacting to what's going on now. And I think that's a great, you know, dichotomy between the way we operate and the way doctors operate. Doctors, we do not have health care in America. We have sick care. You know, they wait until you're sick, and then they slap some pills in you and try to keep you going until you're 85. That is not vitality. That's not, you know, that's not life to me. Now, obviously, there are situations where you need prescriptions, and, you know, Western medicine is a wonderful thing. But what if you could just take some time in your 30s and 40s and say, well, shit, I don't want to go down that road. I don't want to be 65 and one hip break away from, basically being in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. What things can I do right now in order to make it better for me and my family in the future?
Yeah. Stop smoking crack.
I think we can all agree on that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Peter. All right.
Patrick, the more you know.
Thank you so much for coming on our show today, brother.
Yeah, man. It was good spending some time with you guys. It was fun.
Yeah. Hey, Enrichers, we want to thank you for joining us for another episode of the Health and Wealth Podcast. And to be able to see all of our previous wonderful guests like Patrick Huey from VIP, go to our website at www.thehealthandwealthpodcastshow.com and make sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Google, Podbean, wherever. We're out there everywhere. So for my phenomenal co-host, Mr. Chemical Free Body himself, Tim James, I'm Carter Wilcoxon, CEO and founder of CSI Financial Group. Patrick, seriously, your story, your backstory was awesome. And I love the journey that you're on and the path and the direction that you're going. And I can tell you that I can tell the listeners out there, your clients are in good hands.
Thanks, Carter. That means a lot to me, and I can't imagine a better compliment.
Absolutely. So until next time, Enrichers, we will see you on the Health and Wealth Podcast. Thank you, everybody. Hey, Enrichers. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Health and Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Carter Wilcoxon.
And I'm your host, Tim James. And by God, we are committed to helping you guys have fat wallets, flat bellies. So tune in again for another episode and make sure to like, share, and drink a lot of water.
Or beer.
You have just listened to the Health and Wealth Podcast with Carter and Tim.